What? What is this?
So slow to catch on.
Look at those monsters!
Relax, beautiful.
Hello everybody and welcome back to another session of Typewriter Shenanigans with me, Brett, and my good friend James.
Good day, sir.
Good day. And today we are moving on to the final Resident Evil game to be developed for the original PlayStation console. We're taking a short break from the mainline entries and taking a little island holiday. Although it's not the holiday we want to take.
This is the Jet 2 of the Resident Evil series.
You're Ryanair. Yeah, this is not a good holiday, and it's the kind of holiday you don't take any photos, you don't relax, you can't wait to get back home. It's of course we're going to be talking about Resident Evil Survivor. So, released as Biohazard Gun Survivor in Japan, this is a first-person spin-off in the Resident Evil franchise that marked a major experimental phase for Capcom. It attempted to bring the cinematic survival horror formula into a first-person gun-based format, and although the final product became infamous for its generally poor aesthetics, voice acting, and also its control system limitations, especially outside Japan, the game remains a fascinating piece of Resident Evil history, especially given how it was originally intended for the original Resident Evil game to be a first-person game. So, although the game was the first Resident Evil game to be critically panned, Resident Evil Survivor spawned its own series of games and is seen as something of an oddity and a rarity among the Resident Evil fanbase. I mean, we're obviously going to be talking about this a lot for the next sort of couple of hours, but I mean, to say that it is an oddity and it is a rarity.
It certainly is an oddity.
But I don't know how fondly I can look back on it, like my experience with it.
I think nostalgia and rose-tinted glasses can only do so much work.
Agreed.
I think Survivor tests the limits of
nostalgia, and what good it can do, because I agree, you're 100% correct there, because when I replayed it on my YouTube channel, I was just like, you know what, maybe it'll be kind of fun, maybe it'll be a good laugh, and maybe I'll get something from it, but actually, I guess the only way I could find it fun was just because it was so bad.
There's definitely a laugh to be had, but I don't think you're laughing with it.
No, definitely not. So, Resident Evil Survivor, released for the Sony PlayStation in Japan on 27th of January 2000, March 31st in the UK and Europe, and all the way in 30th of August in the US. So they had to wait a while for it, which, to be fair, I mean, I'd say good things come to those who wait, but not in this instance. So, but although why this was potentially delayed for so long, we will come to a little later. So this was the series' first leap into the full first-person gameplay, arriving nearly 2 decades before Resident Evil 7 would make the perspective mainstream. Designed from the start as a hybrid, part first-person exploration, part arcade-inspired light gun shooter, and entirely separate from the cinematic fixed-camera formula that defined the early games. It was meant to be played with the Namco's G-Con 45 light gun accessory, allowing players to aim freely while navigating 3D environments. At the time, a legitimately bold idea, which I think it was. I think it was quite a... I think Survivor is a good idea on paper, but that's probably where, at the time, it ended. Yeah,
it was trying things that other sort of light gun games weren't, because, I mean, up until that point, especially for, the home console, light gun games were entirely on rails experiences, weren't they? It was, exactly. You look at Time Crisis, you look at the Die Hard trilogy, the segment of that's like a light gun game, and it was very much like you're just funneled through this game and you just have, as long as it takes you to clear a screen and then it will move you on, whereas this actually, tried, it's admirable that it tried to...
Yes, exactly.
Give you control over your character as well as
Yeah,
as the shooting element.
And I think it proves the fact that 4 years after the release of the original Resident Evil, at that point that it released, that they wanted to do Resident Evil as a first-person game to start with, and clearly they were right that they couldn't do it. Because if they had pushed this out as the launch game almost.
Oh yeah, the series would have been dead before it even.
Yes.
Before it even had a chance to.
Not even undead.
No,
it would have just been dead. Yeah, exactly. So, despite the setback, Survivor introduced something new. Free movement, first-person shooting in a Resident Evil world, branching past that altered encounters and story progression, and a structure that merged console survival horror with arcade pacing. Now, this was a particularly difficult subject to research, as there isn't a massive amount of material or sources dedicated to the development of this release. So we're going to do our best. Presumably there's not much about it because people don't like talking about it. So, but I have tried. So, Survivor was developed by TOS with Capcom oversight. Japanese video game developer TOS had a great I think I'm pronouncing that right. It doesn't have an accent on it or anything. So it's not like TOSE or is that, so I think it's TOS. TOSE. TOS had a great library of games under their belt, so it seemed a side project of this magnitude should have been easy enough task for them to manage. Directed by Hiroyuki Kai, who only seems to have this game attached to his name in any major capacity, and story work handled by Capcom's flagship writing team, including Noboru Sugamura, with the help from Naoki Sakai, who delved deeper into Umbrella's ambitions, goals, and operations. With this in mind, it seemed like Survivor had everything working in its favour. Because Survivor was designed around light gun use, the team built environments and movement systems specifically with gun con in mind. The sudden decision by Capcom USA to remove light gun support from the Western release forced last-minute programming alterations and contributed to the game's awkward controls overseas. So we kind of got that weird, like, cursor, yellow cursor thing, didn't we? To save development time, many enemy models and animations from Resident Evil 2 were recycled. While this worked for distant third-person encounters in RE2, the up-close first-person perspective exposed their rigid animations and blocky geometry. Given when this game was released, and the fact that we also had Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3 all released on this console, I can't think of any reason or excuse why this game looks so bad.
No, it is a very ugly game.
It's awful.
Yeah.
There's not one smooth edge. It's appalling. Genuinely, even though researching the game and its development, I was trying to understand why does it look the way it does. By the time they reached Resident Evil 3, they knew how to push the console to its limits to make games look as good as they could. Now, I know the game was developed by TOS and not the Capcom production teams, but Capcom did have oversight and they signed off on this. So, bearing in mind, like, Code Veronica came out the same year. Like, the same year, Code Veronica, a next-generation game. Like, there's literally no excuse. Music was handled by Shiro Komoto, and to be fair, the soundtrack is very forgettable. And it actually drove me a little mental when I was playing it. Like, honestly, having headphones on and playing it, and it was just doing this insane, repetitive... honestly, it's... The repetitive series of sounds and beats rather than creating any kind of atmospheric environments which would evoke a sense of fear or dread, or even make it feel action or anything like that.
It felt, and I sort of sitting through the game, it felt very much like it was just someone just sat randomly moving chords on a keyboard.
Yeah. It's like
as long as we stay in a minor key, so it sounds a bit spooky. There's no real orchestration gone into this score whatsoever. No, it's terrible. It can barely be called a soundtrack. I think it's awful. Survivor plays like no Resident Evil title that came before it. Instead of the fixed camera angles and the third-person perspectives on pre-rendered backgrounds, survival horror setup that the franchise had become famous for, the game is fully first-person. Unlike other light gun games at the time, it allowed free movement and it wasn't on rails, just as we said.
and structured around exploration and selectable branching routes, similar to other Resident Evil titles, although when you play it, it still feels extremely linear.
Yeah.
Players move through 3D spaces with the controller, but combat turns into an arcade-like shooting gallery with an on-screen crosshair, and I think this will be how most people experience the game. With the gun-con movement, with the gun-con, movement and turning were done by firing off-screen, while aiming was handled by pointing the light gun. Although I never used the light gun, so I have no real idea how well it worked or how it worked, because we didn't have the support for the gun con in our territories. But yeah, apparently you sort of like shot off screen, left, right, or whatever to turn. I have no idea how accurate this would have been. I don't understand it. The game pulls many of its enemies straight from Resident Evil 2, such as zombies, lickers, the Ivies, and tyrants, while also reintroducing the original Hunter A and adding new foes such as the Undertaker / Trash Sweeper soldiers and the evolving Hypnos T-type tyrant. We will, of course, come to the enemies a little later. Most handguns feature infinite ammo, encouraging rapid shooting rather than strict resource preservation. The handgun will also be your primary weapon in the game and is a lot more capable at dealing with more serious enemies than the usual zombies and dogs as seen in previous games. Larger weapons use limited ammunition, making them situational power tools, but we will also cover that a little later. The save function in Survivor is unusual. Moving away from the traditional ink ribbons and typewriters, the game only records your inventory and files, and only after death or upon finishing the game. There are no mid-game save rooms or inventory storage chests. This was another reason why when I played it on my channel, I played it in one playthrough.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know how the game would save my progress. Like, bearing in mind, like, the PlayStation did things by memory card. That was how you knew you were saving your progress, and it was something you had to, like, literally do yourself, wasn't it?
It was a manual action. There was this was long before the days of auto-saving.
Yeah, because you had onboard storage and things like that. So when I was replaying, I was just, I don't know how it's saving. I don't know what I'm doing. If I stop, what happens? And I was terrified that I would have to, the sheer prospect of having to face that game again from the start, I was like, no, I need to finish this so I can never ever play it ever again. So anyway, yeah. Now the game isn't particularly long. I think I finished it in a single playthrough on my channel in a couple of hours, and probably could have done it quicker. You have like a number of lives, I believe, or continues, you know, a little bit like an arcade game. Because I did die at the final boss. That is where I did actually die on my playthrough. So that final boss was quite tough because you're in a very limited space, and turning around was so slow. By the time I turned around, he was on my ass. So I did die a couple of times, and you have like lives or continues, and it sort of takes you back to a checkpoint.
Right.
But I still do feel that the game encourages you to play it in a single playthrough rather than save and come back to it.
Yeah, it certainly feels that way.
Yeah. It's a strange system, and not one I could really understand or get my head around properly. Honestly, it really made me nervous about dying. I could not face starting all over again. So, what is the story of Resident Evil Survivor? Well, with the destruction of Raccoon City, where would the future of Resident Evil be, and where would it be set? Where would it take us? Well, as previously mentioned, the story for Survivor was written by Capcom's in-house writing team, Flagship, which we discussed during our Resident Evil 3 episodes. Noboru Sugimura, alongside his Flagship teammates, actually wrote a great and interesting story for the game, which helped to further pack out the lore of the Umbrella Corporation. And it's a shame the game is so uninteresting that it just gets lost and overlooked, because there's actually a really good story in there, but honestly, like, you can't be immersed in it because it's so fucking dull a game.
Yeah.
And it also doesn't help that the voice acting in the game is also so bad that it's hard to take serious and pay attention to any dialogue that is driving the story narrative.
I genuinely could, like, you know, we've talked about this sort of away from the pod, but people talk about Resident Evil 1 having this like legendarily bad voice acting, and it does. I can't, I'm not going to take that away from it, but
only in retrospect.
In retrospect, but this game really really, really takes the cake. Like, it is so shockingly bad.
Yeah.
It sort of feels like they've just pulled random people in off the street, stuck them in front of a microphone, and said, just first take, whatever, that'll be fine.
I agree. Yeah, like almost as if they've just got some of the development team and they didn't even bother actually getting actors or anything. They've just literally, we'll just get Jeff from concept art. He'll do it, and he can even do the old lady's voice, which we'll come to in a bit. Oh my days. So, yeah. The story of Resident Evil Survivor, from its opening moments to its explosive climax. Okay, that sounds dodgy. The game opens with a helicopter spiraling out of control over Sheena Island, an Umbrella-owned research settlement. The crash leaves the lone survivor, our protagonist, confused, injured, and suffering from amnesia. Surrounded by undead creatures and strange noises, he stumbles into the abandoned outskirts of the island, unable to remember who he is or why he's here. Locals and scattered Umbrella members refer to him as Vincent Goldman, the cruel administrator blamed for the island's T-virus outbreak and a series of horrific experiments performed on abducted children. Believing this identity to be true, the protagonist struggles with the idea that he might be responsible for everything that's happening around him. Sheena Island is a remote island located off the coast of Europe, accompanied by a smaller neighbouring island nearby. The island was home to at least one fully developed town and housed numerous Umbrella Europe facilities. Over time, Umbrella Pharmaceuticals established such extensive influence that it effectively exercised total control over the island, functioning as both its primary authority and economic backbone. So, very little is known about Sheena Island's early history, though it is confirmed that mining played a central role in sustaining the island's original economy. This changed dramatically in the late 20th century when the Umbrella Corporation took control. Umbrella invested billions into the island's infrastructure and economy, rapidly transforming it into a highly controlled, isolated community. As Umbrella's presence expanded, Sheena Island evolved into a carefully planned settlement designed primarily for Umbrella personnel and their families. The remaining local population placed complete trust in the company, believing Umbrella to be both a benevolent protector and an indispensable provider. In 1998, Umbrella's appointed commander of the island died suddenly under unclear circumstances. He was replaced by Vincent Goldman, a high-ranking Umbrella executive known for his ruthless nature and widely suspected involvement in the assassinations of business rivals. Under Goldman's command, Umbrella began construction of the Tyrant plant beneath a derelict mansion located on the opposite side of the island from the town. Of course. I mean, of course. It's Resident Evil. There's there's a mansion and you're going to build a Tyrant plant under it. Of course. This facility was intended for the mass production of Umbrella's latest bioorganic weapon, the T-103 Tyrant, better known as Mr. X. To support next-generation Tyrant development, Umbrella required a rare hormone known as the beta-heteronon-serotonin. Can't believe I said that right first time.
You did well.
Oh, I can't believe that. To acquire it, Sheena Island became the centre of an international human trafficking operation. Adolescents were abducted and subjected to horrific, fatal brain surgeries to extract the hormone, ensuring a steady supply for Umbrella's research. It's fucking dark, man. What the fuck? All of this in a shit game. What the fuck? In October 1998, the remaining test subjects attempted to escape from the island's prison. The attempt was swiftly stopped by guards, but Vincent Goldman personally executed the prisoners himself. Concerned that the deaths would eliminate valuable experimental material, Goldman ordered the guards to report the incident as a group suicide. Damn, this guy's sick. By this point, rumours of human experimentation had already spread among the public, and the official explanation was met with widespread scepticism. In response, a covert plot emerged with Umbrella to remove Goldman from power. The conspirators wiretapped Goldman's phone lines and successfully recorded him confessing not only to executing the prisoners, but also to murdering colleagues in order to secure his own assignment to Sheena Island. The evidence was deliberately withheld until November, when an Umbrella executive was scheduled to conduct an inspection of the island. Goldman became aware of the plot well in advance, yet curiously, he allowed it to continue. As the player, you navigate through Sheena Island's decaying streets, underground labs, and canal system, where the player character, believing himself to be Vincent, encounters Lot and Lily Klein, siblings left behind after their parents, Umbrella researchers, disappeared. Terrified and misinformed, they initially fear him, convinced he's the monstrous Vincent they've heard about, but as he protects them, they slowly begin to trust him. The truth eventually emerges. He isn't Vincent after all. Oh, what a twist. He is Ark Thompson. What the fuck kind of name is Ark?
Oh.
I don't think I've ever heard anyone called Ark.
No.
Is it a name?
That's all right. I don't know. But is he responsible for what happens in Requiem? Do we know?
Well,
is there a link there? We know he's good buddies with Leon S. Kennedy.
Leon S. Kennedy. You've always got to put the S in there. Well, yeah. I mean, they call it Ark, don't they? You know.
Let's not talk Requiem spoilers right now.
Not yet. Not yet. We've got a field report coming up. Yeah. He is Ark Thompson, a private investigator sent by Leon S. Kennedy to infiltrate the island. So, Leon at this point, a trainee government agent, suspected illegal Umbrella activity on Sheila Island. Well, I mean, let's face it, if it's an Umbrella facility, chances are
it's
illegal.
It's safe to assume there's some
illegal
shit going down.
Yeah, illegal shit's going down there, isn't it? So he encouraged Ark to investigate the island's facilities. Goldman, learning of Thompson's infiltration, chose to investigate Ark's background and motivations, ultimately allowing him to continue his investigation uninterrupted for 2 weeks. On November 22nd, with the Umbrella executive's inspection imminent, Goldman finally acted. Losing patience with the conspiracy against him, he deliberately released a strain of the T virus into the town, infecting the civilian population and plunging the island into chaos. Goldman's plan was to eliminate the population in what would be dismissed as an accident. Oh, it's just an accident.
I didn't mean to.
Oh, it was an accident, I'm sorry. Then escape with critical research data to secure a promotion with Umbrella headquarters. However, the outbreak rapidly spread beyond civilians, infecting researchers and Umbrella Security Service personnel as well. USS units were later observed firing indiscriminately on civilians as the orders completely collapsed. After several days, Umbrella headquarters became fully aware of the situation. In response, the company deployed its Undertaker units with orders to sterilize the island entirely, killing all survivors, whether civilian, infected, or Umbrella personnel, and to activate the island's self-destruct system. This leads us to the start of the game, where both Goldman and Ark Thompson were stranded on the island after being injured in a helicopter crash. Goldman, having survived the crash, used the island's integrated computer systems to release additional BOWs in an attempt to eliminate Thompson. Deep within the Sheena Island facility, Umbrella had been developing the Hypnos T-Type, a tyrant variant capable of rapid evolution. In a further desperate attempt to silence Ark, Vincent releases the Hypnos Tyrant to kill Ark, but kills him instead, triggering a battle that spans multiple transformative stages. As the island enters its full self-destruct protocols, Ark manages to evacuate Lot and Lily, fighting the Hypnos Tyrant through all three of its evolving forms, culminating in a final helipad showdown. All the best showdowns happen on a helipad. As Ark and the Klein siblings escape in the helicopter, the Tyrant makes one final effort to kill the survivors, climbing aboard the helicopter in flight. Firing the helicopter's 2 missiles, the creature is finally destroyed for good. The island detonates behind them as Ark reassures the children that whatever comes next, they'll keep moving forward as long as the helicopter still has fuel. That's reassuring. As the island's entire population was wiped out following an outbreak of a strain of the T-virus, the incident would later earn Sheena Island the grim reputation of being known as the Second Raccoon City. So, before we move on, let's just discuss something we touched upon earlier. Earlier we discussed the game's length, and the branching pathways are designed to give players a feeling of wanting to return and replay the game and explore the areas and paths they didn't previously take. If that's what they were encouraging, it didn't fucking work.
No.
Because I have no inclination or want to go back and play that game again.
I cannot fathom why anyone would.
No, definitely not. After the initial opening, you will have 3 doors you can take. These lead either to the church, the restaurant, or the theatre. You will always exit these areas into the same streets, like the street areas afterwards. Entering any of these doors does not affect the narrative of the game in any way. Your next branching pathway is either the hospital, the arcade, or the library. Going into the arcade will trigger a cutscene of an Umbrella commander descending from a helicopter alongside other soldiers also rappelling down. You find these to be Undertakers who smash into the arcade and open fire. Entering the library, you will encounter Andy Holland, who flees when he hears the sound of the approaching Umbrella helicopters. If you go into the hospital, you will instead see a cutscene of Vincent watching surveillance feeds of the island and sees the arrival of Umbrella's troops by helicopter. I think I went into the arcade.
Yeah.
I think. The next branching path area is a choice of the nightclub, the rooftops, or the underground. The first option is to proceed downstairs to the underground. This area shows you holding cells where many of the prisoners who rebelled against Vincent were kept before execution. If you choose not to take the stairs down, you'll come to an initial area which will ultimately lead to the nightclub or the rooftops. All 3 of these areas don't have any particular note other than change of scenery and enemy encounters. The 4th and final path to choose is the hillside, the underground mine, and the forest. Once again, all of these areas don't have any exclusive advancements to the story, and the only difference is enemy encounters and difference in environment. The main area which will affect how the story plays out later in the game is the second path, so that being the arcade, the hospital, and the library, and this will ultimately change certain story elements later in the game, which we will discuss shortly. So other branching paths will lead you to find some of the other handguns available through the game. Unlike other Resident Evil games, Survivor only has one ending. But let's move on to characters of the game. So, Ark Thompson, obviously, we've got to start with him, seeing as he's our guy in this one. So, Ark was a private detective whose work brought him into direct conflict with the Umbrella Corporation. A confrontation that ultimately triggered the catastrophic bioweapons incident on Shiina Island. Covertly dispatched to the island at the request of his close friend Leon, who at the time was serving as an agent of US Stratcom. That's who he was working with. With the knowledge, Umbrella Pharmaceuticals was conducting illegal bioweapons research on Shiina Island. Thompson's assignment was simple in theory, but dangerous in practice. Infiltrate the island, gather proof, and expose what Umbrella was hiding. Loyalists within Umbrella itself had begun a secret investigation into the island's appointed commander Vincent Goldman, suspecting him of serious criminal conduct, which is, I mean, if Umbrella are thinking that, then it must be fucking bad, you know. While Thompson carried out his own investigation, the island was already on the brink of collapse. Goldman, already paranoid and aware that forces within Umbrella were closing in on him, became convinced that Thompson had been sent by Umbrella to collect evidence of his crimes. Interpreting Thompson's presence as a direct threat to his authority and survival, Goldman responded with extreme measures. In a ruthless attempt to eliminate both Thompson and any potential witness, Goldman ordered the release of the Tyrant plant's bioweapons into the town. Interesting to note, there are several subtle details in Resident Evil Survivor that quietly suggest that Ark Thompson, before his career as a private detective, potentially served in the military. At one point in the game, Vincent Goldman is shown seizing Ark's dog tags. This moment is never directly explained, and on the surface it raises questions. As a civilian investigator, Ark would have no obvious reason to be carrying military identification. However, the presence of dog tags strongly implies a prior enlistment, with the most plausible explanation being that Ark once served in the armed forces and retained them as a personal memento after leaving active duty. This interpretation gains further weight during the game's finale. Despite being a private investigator / detective by trade, Ark demonstrates the ability to competently pilot an assault helicopter under extreme pressure.
Yeah, that's true.
Although this is only a game, this is not a trivial skill, and it suggests training well beyond that of an ordinary civilian. Yeah, which again, it is only a game, and it's a very shit one.
Yep.
But you kind of think to yourself, well, you start adding these bits together, it could, taken together, the unexplained dog tags and his demonstrated piloting proficiency. These details strongly imply that Ark Thompson may have previously been attached to an army unit or a similar role prior to 1998. While never explicitly confirmed in canon or lore, as is the case with much of Resident Evil Survivor, these clues paint a picture of a protagonist whose past experiences may have quietly prepared him for the horrors he would face on Sheena Island. Vincent Goldman was the appointed commander of Umbrella's facilities on Sheena Island, a remote European territory that had effectively become a corporate state. Young, ambitious, and utterly devoid of empathy, kind of a prerequisite if you're going to work for Umbrella.
Yep.
Goldman represented Umbrella's ideal executive, someone willing to do absolutely anything to expand his authority and secure promotion within the company. Even before his assignment to Sheena Island, Goldman had already demonstrated how far he was prepared to go. While climbing the corporate ladder, he orchestrated the murder of colleagues who stood in his way, removing obstacles with calculated efficiency. His actions were known, at least in part, to his mother. Mother knows best. Who reportedly pleaded with him to abandon Umbrella and return home, a request he ignored without hesitation. Throughout the game, you will hear some voice recordings of Vincent's mother, and it blatantly sounds like a dude doing an impersonation of an old lady. It's unintentionally hilarious and bad. And you know what? If that is a lady that's done that voice, then I'm very, very sorry.
Yeah.
I really am. But you sound like a dude doing an impression of an old lady, and I'm really sorry.
Yeah.
But it's bad.
It's an incredibly, memorably bad performance.
Oh, Vincent, I can't believe that you've been doing these horrible things. It's something like that, isn't it? Yeah, it's
Mrs. Doubtfire.
Mrs. Doubtfire is more believable. I'm sorry, but like this is just this is shocking. Goldman's rule began to unravel following an attempted prison breakout by surviving test subjects. Rather than recapture them, Goldman personally executed each escapee in cold blood. This act marked a turning point, causing unrest among the island's residents and prompting covert efforts to have him removed. Loyalists to Umbrella HQ began wiretapping Goldman's communications, attempting to gather evidence that would justify his dismissal. By late November, Goldman's paranoia reached critical levels when a young boy named Locke Klein reported seeing someone impersonating him, later to be revealed to be private investigator Ark Thompson. Goldman concluded that Umbrella HQ had sent a spy to expose his crimes. In response, he made the ultimate escalation. Goldman deliberately released a strain of the T-virus into the town along with the multiple T-103 tyrants. His intention was to frame the outbreak as an accident and escape the island during Umbrella's cleanup operation. During the outbreak, Goldman tracked Ark Thompson to Umbrella's main office and confronted him directly, demanding to know if he was the spy Lot had described. Ark managed to push past him and flee to the rooftop helipad. In a reckless act of fury, Goldman leapt onto the helicopter and fired at it mid-flight, causing the aircraft to explode. Remarkably, both men survived the crash. Goldman was rendered unconscious, and when Ark later encountered him, he left him behind, believing him dead. If Ark later passes through the island hospital, it is revealed that Goldman survived and managed to return to Umbrella's main office. Monitoring security feeds, he realises Ark is still alive and releases the island's remaining bioorganic weapons to hunt him down, likely tyrants or hunters. In this timeline, Goldman ultimately follows Ark to the tyrant plant, intent on personally killing the man who ruined his plans. Instead, he meets a fitting end, torn apart by the claws of Umbrella's own creation, the experimental Hypnos T-type tyrant. If Ark avoids the hospital entirely, Goldman is never seen again after the helicopter crash, and his ultimate fate remains unknown. Due to the Resident Evil Survivors canon never being addressed, this remains another unresolved thread in Umbrella's long history of internal corruption and self-destruction. And I must admit, in my playthrough, that was a problem I had, was that I never saw Vincent ever again.
No.
So the story was never fully explained. I just don't really fully get it.
Yeah, I definitely. Yeah, full disclosure for everyone, I didn't play the game. I just watched a playthrough of it because I didn't have the self-loathing to put myself through actually playing it myself. But the stream of it I watched there, yeah, I never. All of this, as you were saying, I was like, I don't remember any of this happening.
Yeah.
It's because it didn't, because the version of it I watched, it didn't
exactly
go to the hospital, so the main antagonist of the game just disappeared.
but you see, that's absolutely ridiculous, isn't it? I mean, the fact that like they couldn't even think of a way to make sure that the true story of the game is delivered to you, regardless of which path that you take. It's just like, oh, you'll only really understand what's happening in this game unless you go to this specific place. And I didn't do that, so therefore I was like, well, what the fuck happened to Vincent?
Yeah.
You know, all this talk about Vincent, who the fuck's Vincent? And what the fuck is he to do with this game? And I sort of remembered in that, you know, loosely kind of remembered it from when I played it years and years and years ago. But it's an area of Resident Evil lore and history that has remained very elusive to me because I've never had any interest in it, and also it's never really been referred to ever since. I think the last time I remember it being referred to is in the intro to Resident Evil Zero. They refer to it, but it's only in a passing sentence. Otherwise, I just don't really remember it being referred to otherwise. So, yeah, it's just ridiculous. There's all this stuff about everything that happens on this island, and you don't even get to see it in the fucking game.
Yeah.
So next, we've got Lot and Lily Klein. So, Lot. They say, like, Lot as a name, Lot. I've heard that be used for Charlotte.
Yeah.
You know, like being short for
I get
like
that.
Lottie or whatever. But Lot for a boy, I don't think I've ever heard that.
No, it's.
I'm not the fair.
I can only assume that this is a case of like just a poor Japanese to English translation, because there is absolutely no precedent in any like.
It's like, oh well, we've got Lily, we need another name that begins with an L for a boy. Lot. That sounds good. I like that a lot. That'll do. Fucking terrible. Lot was a young boy living on Sheena Island with his sister Lily. In the aftermath of the island's catastrophic outbreak, Lot would become one of only 3 known survivors, alongside Lily herself and private detective Ark Thompson. Lot, born in the mid-1980s, and Lily, born in the early 1990s, were raised entirely within the isolated world of Sheena Island, a private territory owned and governed by the Umbrella Corporation. His upbringing was deeply shaped by Umbrella's influence, not only because of the island's authoritarian rule, but also due to their family's direct connection to the company. Lot's father served as the chief of the Gene Application Engineering Laboratory, placing the Klein family firmly within Umbrella's inner circle. From a young age, Lot and Lily and the other residents were subjected to ideological indoctrination. The truth, of course, was Umbrella was abducting youths from around the world and dissecting them for a raw biological material, a reality entirely hidden from the island's civilian population. As a result of this environment, Lot absorbed Umbrella's doctrine. They were taught to believe that society was naturally divided and that superior humans had the right, even the responsibility, to dominate those deemed inferior. However, cracks in that belief began to form when Lot learned that Commander Vincent Goldman had personally executed imprisoned teenagers following a failed escape attempt. For the first time, Lot began to question the moral authority of Umbrella and the people who ruled this world. Having such ideals for a boy. Dangerous.
Little Hitler youth.
Yeah, keep them in line. Not long after Lot encountered Ark Thompson, he became suspicious of Ark when he witnessed him impersonating Commander Goldman during a conversation with Andy Holland, a new employee working in the island's sewer systems. Having met the real Goldman before, Lot immediately recognised the deception. Believing he was acting in the island's best interest, he reported the impersonator directly to Goldman. He went straight to the big chief.
Little rat.
Fucking snitches get stitches, bitch. A decision that would unknowingly contribute to the chain of events that doomed Sheena Island. Yeah, so it's all this little prick's fault. The tragedy soon became personal. Both of Lot and Lily's parents were infected by the virus, forcing them to flee their home and survive on their own. Taking on the role of protector, Lot armed himself with an aluminium baseball bat and found a place to hide his sister before venturing out to search for a means of escape. While exploring the sewers, Lot encountered Ark once again, this time suffering from amnesia. Unaware of Ark's condition and still believing him to be a threat, Lot became defensive, threatening him before fleeing. When Lot later returned to his sister, he found Ark confronting Lily. Panicking, Lot attacked Ark without hesitation and escaped with his sister back to their home. After securing Lily in their bedroom, Lot made a desperate decision. Believing the tyrant plant housed a tram system that would lead off the island, he set out alone. Inside the facility, he encountered a hunter, though he fought back with his bat. Sick. The creature easily overpowered him, throwing him over a railing. Lot barely managed to cling to the edge, moments away from death. Ark arrived just in time, saving Lot and demanding to know why he had been attacked earlier. Upon realising Ark had no memory of his infiltration or deception, Lot was stunned. He confessed his accusations, explained his actions, and apologised. Ark accepted his apology, and the two formed a fragile but necessary alliance. Together, Lot returned home to retrieve Lily, and the three made their way toward a train that would carry them to a helicopter evacuation point. With that, Lot Klein and his sister Lily and Ark Thompson escaped Sheena Island, the last known survivors of what would be remembered as the Second Raccoon City. So, this guy, I've never even fucking met this guy. This next dude is Andy Holland. Another fucking dude who's in the game
somewhere.
That is in the game somewhere, but not that I would know because I never met him. So, Andy Holland, I mean, I couldn't believe it when I was researching this game. I was like, who the fuck is Andy Holland? What the fuck?
Right. Like if you could play through the first Resident Evil and just like never meet Wesker.
Yeah, that's it. You're just like, oh, Wesker's the main baddie. What? What do you mean?
What? So Wesker was the guy with the big arm and the heart? No.
He was the one with the shades on.
Yeah.
Who? It just doesn't make sense. Yeah, it's a really good point. Can you imagine that? Like, one of the most influential. I mean, I know that Survivor doesn't have that, but like, imagine one of the most influential horror games of all time, one of the biggest like gaming franchises, and there's a villain within the first game that you never met, unless you played it in a very specific way. Fuck me. Andy Holland was an Umbrella employee stationed on the planned community of Sheena Island. Officially, his responsibility was the supervision and the maintenance of the island's sewer systems, an outdated and sprawling network hidden beneath the surface. Outside of work, Andy was an amateur photographer, a quiet hobby that stood in stark contrast to the violent past he was trying to escape. Andy Holland's early life was marked by hardship and criminal activity. Struggling to survive, he turned to theft, robbery, and assault to get by. He's a bad egg, this one. Eventually, mounting financial pressure caught up with him, and when he fell behind on rent, Umbrella Corp presented him with what appeared to be a lifeline. Good old Umbrella.
They're so thoughtful.
They are, aren't they? They are just such a community-based corporation.
Really take care of their own.
Yeah, they do. They do. They've got the best interests of everyone at their heart. Umbrella offered Andy a chance at a clean slate. Steady employment, a respectable role, and a place to live. Desperate for stability, he accepted, unaware that he was stepping into one of the corporation's most closely guarded operations. Once stationed on Sheena Island, Andy spent the vast majority of his time underground. Fucking hell. He really landed on his feet. I've got a fresh start getting the fucking sewers, you cunt. Maintaining the aging sewer infrastructure. Oh, Jesus. This isolation had a profound effect on him. While classified information, including references to the T-virus, circulated freely above ground, Andy remained largely oblivious to Umbrella's true activities and the horrors unfolding around him. Because of his sheltered existence, Andy was easily manipulated. When a spy posing as the island's governor, Commander Vincent Goldman, questioned him, Andy accepted the encounter without suspicion. He had no reason to believe that anything on the island was out of the ordinary, let alone criminal. In November 1998, disaster struck. A modified B strain of the T-virus was released across Sheena Island. and bioorganic weapons were deliberately unleashed by Vincent Goldman in response to what he believed was an impending revolt. Against the odds, Andy survived for several days in the chaos that followed. During this time, his mental state deteriorated. Confused, frightened, and desperate for answers, Andy began stalking Ark Thompson, the very spy who had earlier impersonated Vincent Goldman. Because Ark was suffering from amnesia, Andy mistakenly believed that he truly was Vincent and that killing him might somehow bring clarity or justice to the nightmare around him. Andy Holland is presumed dead by the end of the Sheena Island incident, though because of no clear answer within the Resident Evil lore on what is considered canon when it comes to Resident Evil Survivor, the exact circumstances of his death are unclear. Several possibilities are suggested. He may have been killed by roaming mutants, slain by the Hypnos T-type tyrant during an encounter where Ark attempted to reason with him, or perished in the massive explosion that ultimately consumed the island. So it's just another one where it's just like, yeah, well don't know.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Don't matter.
Yeah, it don't really, it's Andy Holland, for crying out loud. Who cares? Depending on the path the player takes, Andy Holland may confront Ark toward the end of the game, only to be killed by the newly awakened Hypnos T-type. In other branching scenarios, Ark may instead encounter Vincent or the commander who comes down on the zip line from the helicopter. So if you don't encounter Andy Holland, you'll encounter one of those.
Yeah.
So you'll either encounter Vincent or the Umbrella commander, and it just sort of that's why it's just not clear what the fuck happens. Andy's personal weapon was a Nambu 14 Custom, referred to in game as Handgun D. His exclusive scene and potential death only appear if the player passes through the library where this weapon can be obtained. Similarly, the Umbrella Commander's encounter is tied to the arcade and Handgun C, while Vincent Goldman's optional confrontation occurs in the hospital and rewards Handgun B. So, but we'll come to that shortly. Finally, we have the Umbrella Commander, and I say finally because thank fuck, man. This unnamed man was an Umbrella soldier and specialist in bioorganic weapon training, entrusted with command of the Undertaker unit. And that's Undertaker, not as in WWE Undertaker. A highly classified anti-BOW task force composed almost entirely of intelligent bioorganic weapons. He was the only human member of the unit, and his primary role was to issue direct commands to the Undertakers, who were capable of understanding spoken language and carrying out complex orders. So, anyway, it's there is a little bit of a history about the commander. There's not much, but although never named in game, he's simply named UT Commander. So, as in Undertaker Commander is I suppose that's what's trying to say. The Undertaker Commander's cutscene and model files are labelled Hank, a detail that has led to speculation that he may be a deliberate reference to Hunk, Umbrella's infamous Grim Reaper.
Oh, this seems relevant.
Yeah. I just can't believe it. It's just well, he's a little bit like Hunk. We'll call him Hank. That's just lame. Whether this connection is symbolic or canonical remains unconfirmed, but the implication reinforces the character's role as a cold professional instrument of Umbrella's will. Now, before we move on to the enemies of the game, let's just quickly run down some of the voice actors of these characters.
We're sorry. We're sorry we have and will continue to make so much fun of you people.
Indeed.
I'm sure you're all wonderful and very professional.
If you happen to be listening to this, I'm sure you did your best. Anybody who has watched footage of the game, or even dared to play it, will know the voice acting in this game is really bad. If the reviewers we've discussed in previous episodes had complained about voice acting in the first 3 games that came before this, well, they haven't heard anything yet. I actually believe the voice acting in this game to be worse than the first, and that's not to say that the first game is a benchmark for shit, but people often point to the first as having bad voice acting. Well, like we've already said, this game gives that game a run for its money.
I think it smashes it into the dirt myself. I think, I think Survivor is the clear bad voice acting world champion.
It is the epitome of shit.
Yeah.
So, Alec Thompson was voiced by Patrick Harlan, who seems to have kept himself fairly busy, but from the best I can tell, he resides in Japan and the body of his work is made up starring in Japanese-produced TV shows and movies. He is also part of a comedic double act, which goes by the name Pakun Makun. Enough said. The game's antagonist, Vincent Goldman, is voiced by Michael Neistut? How would you say that name? Neistut. Michael Neistut, who has had a steady body of work since Resident Evil Survivor, but nothing of any real acclaim. I wasn't able to find out who voiced Vincent's mother, unfortunately.
Oh,
yeah. Probably. It was Michael Neistut.
It was probably just him.
Yeah. Walter Roberts was the voice of Andy Holland, who also has a steady stream of work voicing characters in games and TV series such as Shenmue, Tekken, and Mega Man. He's another one who has some work in Japanese-produced media, so it could be that he just resides in Japan, like some of these do. Colleen Lanke was the person who voiced Lot. She had a few voice credits in Virtua Fighter and Shenmue, but she sadly passed away in 2023.
Oh, very, very sad.
Yeah.
Without wanting to speak ill of the dead, it was a bordering on Dick Dyke in Mary Poppins performance.
It was. Agreed.
The most sort of horribly cartoonish, oi, governor! British accent you could possibly...
Yeah. Oh my god! It's you, it's Vincent! Vincent's the bad one in all of this! Why I order? Yeah, it was bad. Sorry, Colleen. R.I.P. Ruth Holliman, who voiced Lily Klein, has 3 credits to her name, including Resident Evil Survivor, so I presume she's moved on to other endeavours outside of voice acting.
Well, probably for the best.
She might work in a bank now or something like that. Finally, Brian Matul, who voiced the Commander, the Undertaker Commander, he's managed to land himself a few voice roles in games before and after Resident Evil Survivor, but this hasn't been anything extensive, and after a handful of roles in 2000, 2001 and 2002, he returned to voice work once more in 2009 and appeared in a Japanese-produced film in 2015, so it's been very sporadic, those 3 years.
Yeah, this is not an A-list voice cast. No, is what we're getting at.
Yes, agreed. And to be fair, other than the fact that one of them is in a comedic double act, this was probably as much as I expected from a voice cast of this game. I feel the common thread through these actors is that the majority of them most likely reside in Japan, and they were hired based on this factor. That they were English speakers in Japan. And if you think about it, that's very similar to how the voice actors for the original Resident Evil were hired. So it's no coincidence that the voice acting in the original Resident Evil is deemed to be poor, and then this is poor, and they were hired in a very similar way.
Yeah, they're pulling from a very shallow pool of
quality.
Yeah.
Resident Evil Survivor has the usual suspects of enemies to encounter, but there are also some interesting additions to the Resident Evil lore. The returning cast of enemies are zombies, the Cerberus dogs, crows, hunters, lickers, and giant spiders, and Mr. X. So
indeed.
Yeah, he's here. And he isn't alone. In this game, Mr. X turns up on a number of occasions, and you fight a fair number of them as well. He can be put down relatively easily with a handgun, seeing as you have infinite ammo. But the main thing is having enough space to keep your distance, as he does close the gap fairly quickly, considering he only walks. The other enemies we have, of course, covered in depth in previous episodes, so we're not going to sort of go over that again, but we will talk about some of the newcomers. So, the first is the Undertakers / trash sweepers. There's a reason we've never seen these again.
Oh my god! Just the first time you encounter them, I just lost it. I laughed out loud for about 5 minutes because it's a chimpanzee basically.
Yeah.
In a SWAT armor
Yes, like almost completely spandex. Yeah.
Tiny little legs and really long arms.
Yeah, with a gun.
And then when when they die, they make a sound like an angry jaguar.
Yes. Yeah, and we're supposed to believe that that's the sound of a monkey, but it most certainly is not. So you kind of hit the nail on the head with that, really. I've not really got much to add to that. So, I mean, from the script that I've wrote about it, which, to be fair, is probably more than it deserves, unlike many of Umbrella's bioorganic weapons, such as Hunters, the Undertakers demonstrated a notably higher level of intelligence, apparently. They were capable of understanding spoken English well enough to follow real-time verbal commands issued by their commander. This marked a significant departure from the typical Bao design philosophy, as the Undertakers were not created as mindless biological weapons, but instead as functioning soldiers. Because of this, they were trained and equipped to use firearms, and were able to handle them with a reasonable degree of accuracy. This combination of intelligence, agility, and weapon use made them a unique hybrid between conventional soldiers and bioengineered weapons. However, despite these advantages, Undertakers were physically weaker than ordinary humans, and even weaker than standard zombies. Individually, they were fragile and unable to overpower most enemies on their own. To compensate for this critical flaw, Undertakers relied heavily on group tactics, working together in coordinated packs to overwhelm their targets through numbers rather than brute strength. I mean, that's the lore side of things, because it didn't fucking happen in the game. There were no tactics, there was nothing. This is just strictly from a lore perspective. That's what's going on.
Shrieking army monkeys.
I mean, that was more like it. Yeah, that was actually pretty good. It's terrible. So anyway, I mean, if I'll just quickly sort of go over some of the other bits. When Undertakers attack, they emit hooting sounds reminiscent of monkeys, and when killed, they would let out piercing shrieks before their bodies completely dissolve, leaving nothing behind. Yeah, I think I've said enough. Yeah, they're like got like long arms like monkeys, and yeah, we'll leave it there. The Hypnos T-type tyrant. So the big bad baddie of Survivor was an experimental tyrant model developed on Sheena Island with Umbrella's secretive tyrant plant. Unlike standard tyrant units, this prototype represented a radical evolutionary experiment rather than a refinement of existing designs. Its name was derived from Hypnos, the Greek god of sleep, the project's thematic connection to altered consciousness, forced biological evolution. Again, not that you'd know that.
No.
The Hypnos project was conceived by Commander Vincent Goldman, and what set the Hypnos T-type apart from all other tyrant models was the inclusion of the Hypnos gene within its genetic structure. This gene functioned as an extreme form of biological natural selection. When introduced into an organism, it systematically destroyed weaker cells, allowing only the strongest to survive. These superior cells were then encouraged to reproduce, continuously pushing the organism toward greater physical dominance. This process was not gradual, it was forced at an unprecedented rate, repeating hundreds of thousands of times both day and night over a continuous 3-week period. The result was a tyrant engineered to evolve rapidly under stress, rather than remaining locked into a single stable form. When first encountered, the Hypnos T-type appeared deceptively restrained compared to other tyrant models. In its initial state, the creature retained a largely humanoid silhouette, standing upright with a smooth, hairless body and pale white skin. The form was deliberately androgynous, lacking any defining gender characteristics, which reinforced Umbrella's goal of creating a purely functional organism rather than a recognisably human one. At this early stage, visible mutations were limited primarily to one arm. This limb was noticeably discoloured and slightly larger than the other, signalling the beginning of asymmetrical tyrant development. The fingers on this arm ended in a small, sharpened claw, which Hypnos used for close-range stabbing and slashing attacks. Aside from this, the creature's body remained relatively controlled, masking the extreme evolutionary potential hidden within its genetic design. We'll just quickly go over it. It's 2 other forms, so because it obviously mutates as you go. I mean, it wouldn't be a Resident Evil game if it didn't. As the Hypnos T-type continued to adapt, its mutations became far more pronounced in its second form. The creature developed a mouth filled with sharp fangs, and the claws on its enlarged arm grew significantly in size and lethality. Its muscle mass increased overall, particularly across the upper torso, and the dominant left arm giving it a visibly more powerful and aggressive build. One of the most unsettling changes during this phase was the emergence of a bulging mass in its chest, marking the early expansion of the heart, a hallmark of Tyrant overdevelopment. Despite this instability, Hypnos gained impressive mobility. It was capable of sprinting at high speeds, using its enhanced strength to deliver brutal slashing attacks and devastating downward strikes. The Tyrant's most dangerous maneuver in this form was its long-range jumping attack, using its explosive leg strength. Hypnos could launch itself across considerable distances, crashing down onto its target with overwhelming force. And then we move on to its final transformation. The Hypnos T-type underwent extreme hyperatonia, a condition caused by uncontrolled muscle overgrowth. The result was a dramatically altered creature, no longer humanoid in posture, but hunched, bestial, and eerily primate-like in movement and appearance. This excessive muscular development came at a cost. As with many advanced Tyrant models, the heart became fully exposed, creating a critically vulnerability in the creature's chest. At the same time, Hypnos suffered a significant loss of intelligence, its cognitive functions degrading until it behaved more like a feral animal than a calculated weapon. Despite these weaknesses, the Hypnos T-type remained highly agile and dangerous. It instinctively attempted to defend its exposed heart by shielding it with its massive claws, compensating for its loss of strategic thinking with raw aggression and speed. Even in this unstable state, Hypnos was far from helpless. Its final form represented the terrifying culmination of forced evolution, unchecked by control or restraint. So that is the enemies. Oh, the enemies just aren't even interesting. You know what? This is just poo.
It is a terrible, terrible menagerie in this one of.
It's just not a great subject, is it? I hate hating on it, but it's just a boring subject.
It is. It's so sad. I guess the problem with Survivor is that the most interesting things about it are its failings and just how bad of a game it is. Like, one thing that I'm not sure that we've not sort of touched upon that you do, is a staple part of the Resident Evil experience is finding documents throughout the game and them sort of providing exposition. Obviously, games at the time weren't necessarily able to do through like cutscenes or whatever. But
yeah,
it like the stark decline in quality of these like written documents in Survivor compared to even like the very first game, let alone 2 and 3.
Well, that's what
it's like they're like, I know that these files exist to deliver exposition and to sort of offer a little bit of sort of background color to the scenario, but these are like being hit in the face with like the most like blunt and unimaginative like expositionary like diatribes that.
But that's what made the first Resident Evil like so good as well, though, is that, like you said, where it failed to be able to deliver exposition through documents, which, they had to do that because they couldn't do it through cutscenes because there wasn't the technology to do it at the time or whatever. So they did it through the means of documents, etc. Well, it's a really great way, and like people loved that about the original Resident Evil, didn't they?
Yeah.
People loved that. But then now it's like you get to this one and you think, okay, well, at least we can expand on the lore of the game and hopefully people will get invested. But I think even if they had the best written documents, it still wouldn't have been enough to save the game.
But this is just, if you can indulge me for a minute, I've just pulled up. I'm going to read out one of the document entries from Survivor, just as an example.
Please do.
if I can read this through with a straight face, it'll be incredible. So this is one you find quite late in the game. It's the factory worker's diary.
Okay.
So, August 5th, 1998. I can't stand it anymore. I have to take the subjects to the operating table and sever their skulls to extract a part of their brain. I do this over and over, day after day. It is awful. Guilt stays with me all the time, even after I go to bed. Commander Vincent instructs us, do not see them as humans. They are just raw material we use to create tyrants with. But it is we who cut their skulls. I could never consider them as just raw materials. They are humans, just like we are. I asked Commander Vincent about ways to reduce their suffering, but he ignored my request, saying that by using anesthetics, pure beta-heteronon-serotonin cannot be extracted. Even if it is the company's orders, I don't believe what we are doing is ethical. I'm sure that I'll be sent to the worst possible place when I die. Or perhaps should I say, I'm already there. It's just like, they're all like that.
Yeah.
I remember getting to the bit where you find Lot's diary, and it's like, he's like giving like exclamations like, I need help, please someone rescue me. It's like, why are you writing that in a diary?
Why write that?
Why would you write that in a diary? Just like, if you want someone to rescue, shout it.
I think there are a few documents in Resident Evil in general where I read something and I'm like, who would write this?
Yeah.
You know, like who would... And I think every Resident Evil is a little bit guilty of that.
Oh, I mean,
Resident Evil Survivor is particularly bad for it. It's almost like, we've got to put some documents in there because Resident Evil's known for its documents. People are expecting some good stuff to read, and they get this.
Yeah, and I can suspend my disbelief. I understand, like the sort of cheesy-ish like diary entries are part of the, I mean, like the Keeper's Diary in Resi 1 is like one of the most famous like documents in gaming history. Do you know what I mean? It's like everybody knows the itchy tasty.
Yep.
Who doesn't? Thing. But this, and I'm all for it as a game mechanic. I understand that, like, there's always a bit of the ludonarrative dissonance with like, what would this actually realistic? Like, of course not. Of course it wouldn't. This is for our entertainment and to help us, understand the game we're navigating through. But just this, it's so bad and so ham-fisted that.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not inconsistent with the rest of the game. I'll give it.
No, that's it. It just shows that a game this bad is bad on every level. Yeah. There's no saving grace for it, and that's the thing. Like I've now got about the weapons to read about, and nothing about this game fills me with joy. Like even just to read it. is painful. Even just to read about the game and read it out, I can't even get any. I can't even put any backbone into it. It's so boring. I mean, I'm going to have to just like
let's persevere because that's what we do here.
That's what we do. We're here to give people the most comprehensive coverage of Resident Evil that we possibly can. We aren't the foremost fountain of knowledge when it comes to the series, but it's our job to get all of this together and deliver it to you in one place so that you don't have to do it.
Yeah.
That is our
You can just listen to this episode and never play the game itself.
Yes, exactly.
Not for most of the games. Absolutely play them. This one, listen to us tell you how bad it is.
Yes. And just know everything there is to know about it, and then therefore you'll never have to experience it firsthand. You just take our word for it. Okay, so let's talk about the weapons. So, as previously discussed, the weapons in Survivor primarily focus around handguns, all of which have infinite ammo. However, there are a few other weapons available which do have limited ammo, which have to be found throughout the environment. So let's break down the weapons available within the game and how to find them. So handgun A is what... I mean, this is it. They couldn't even fucking come up with some fucking good names for the guns. That's how bad this game is! Handgun A! You boring bastards! My God! Handgun A is one of the 4 handguns featured in Resident Evil Survivor, and it is identified as an Austrian-made Glock 17. Serving as the most basic and reliable firearm in the game, it functions as the player's primary sidearm during the early stages of the experience. So, Handgun A is Ark Thompson's starting weapon, and it remains available from the very beginning all the way through. It is chambered for standard handgun bullets, which are notable for being infinite in supply. This design choice reinforces the weapon's role as dependable fallback option, ensuring that the player is never left completely defenseless, regardless of resource management. In terms of performance, Handgun A sits firmly in the middle ground. It delivers average damage, has a moderate reload speed, and maintains a nice steady rate of fire, making it easy to use but not particularly specialised. Each reload holds 17 rounds, accurately reflecting the Glock 17's real-world magazine capacity. Thanks to its combination of unlimited ammunition and decent magazine size, Handgun A is especially effective for controlling groups of zombies, allowing the player to keep multiple enemies at a safe distance without worrying about conserving bullets. With careful positioning and timing, it can also be used against tougher enemies that require significantly more effort and precision. While it is technically capable of damaging stronger foes, the weapon is not recommended for high-threat enemies. At most, it should only be relied upon to deal with a single hunter, and even then only with cautious movement and sustained fire. For anything more dangerous, stronger weapons are strongly advised. Overall, Handgun A represents the baseline firearm in Resident Evil Survivor. Reliable, forgiving, and endlessly available, but limited in stopping power. It excels at crowd control against weaker enemies, and serves as a safety net throughout the game, ensuring that Ark is never without a means to fight back. Next, Handgun B. Handgun B? Honestly, it blows my mind. Is identified as the CZ75, a semi-automatic handgun of Czech manufacture. Despite its unassuming statistics, this weapon occupies a unique niche within the game's arsenal. Handgun B can be found on the second floor of the hospital, making it an optional pickup that rewards exploration during the mid-game. While it may initially appear inferior on paper, its true value only becomes apparent in the hands of an experienced player. When compared to the other handguns available in Resident Evil Survivor, Handgun B is statistically the weakest in several key areas. It has the lowest raw firepower, the lowest reload time, and the magazine capacity of 15 rounds is smaller than that of Handgun A. However, these drawbacks are counterbalanced by one crucial advantage. Handgun B possesses the fastest rate of fire of all the handguns. This allows it to unload an entire magazine extremely quickly, give it an edge in situations where sustained rapid damage is more important than individual shot power. In the hands of a skilled player, Handgun B can be surprisingly effective, even in the most dangerous encounters the game has to offer. By taking advantage of its rapid fire capabilities, players can quickly reposition themselves close or controlled distance and concentrate full magazines into precise headshots. This technique proves especially useful against high-threat enemies such as the T-103 Tyrants, and remarkably, even against the Hypnos T-Tyrant itself. While the weapon's low power makes careless use ineffective, disciplined firing and accurate shot placement can turn Handgun B into a devastating tool. So, yeah, in summary, it's kind of like a high-risk, high-skill weapon, where if you sort of master it, you can really get the most out of it. The Handgun C is identified as a Beretta 8000 Cougar, a semi-automatic pistol of Italian manufacture. Within the game's progression, this weapon represents one of the most noticeable and practical upgrades to Ark Thompson's early game arsenal. It's found in the basement of the arcade. I think that's the gun I got when I played it, and becomes available shortly after the player is assaulted by the Undertaker cleaners. Its placement at the point in the game ensures that the players who explore thoroughly are rewarded with a significantly more versatile handgun before enemy encounters begin to escalate in difficulty. In terms of performance, Handgun C strikes a balance between power and efficiency. It features a noticeably lower rate of fire than Handgun A, and like Handgun B, chambers 15 rounds per magazine. However, these limitations are more than compensated for two major advantages. It has a higher attack power than the starting weapon, and it boasts the fastest reload speed of all handguns. So, taken together, these make Handgun C a direct, meaningful upgrade over Handgun A. So, yeah, it's probably better than in a lot of ways than the other guns. It's good against taking out large groups of weaker enemies. It can also be good against lickers and Cerberus dogs. So yeah, it's a good game, that a good gun, that one. So the Handgun D is the final handgun available in Resident Evil Survivor and is identified as the Nambu 14 Custom, historically notable as Japan's first automatic handgun. Within the game's weapon lineup, Handgun D stands apart as the most specialised and skill-dependent pistol Ark Thompson can acquire. The location of the gun can be found in the library, where the player is ambushed by a hunter. Its placement reflects its intended role, a high-risk, high-reward firearm designed for players who are confident in their aim and their positioning. Compared to other handguns in Resident Evil Survivor, Handgun D is defined by extremes. It delivers the highest damage per shot of any handgun in the game, but this power comes at a cost. It has the lowest rate of fire, smallest magazine capacity, holding only 8 rounds, and is the only handgun in its class to feature noticeable recoil, requiring careful shot placement. So yeah, the fact that it's got recoil is kind of weird. On the positive side, it possesses the second fastest reload speed among handguns, helping to partially offset its limited capacity and allowing skilled players to stay mobile during intense encounters. So it can be pretty good against some of the stronger BOWs in smaller groups. It can be used against hunters, lickers, and ivies, where its high per shot damage can quickly neutralise threats without excessive ammunition.
Sort of seems like that one sort of sits somewhere between the standard handguns and the Magnum.
Yeah,
in terms of its use.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's good that as long as you get good shots on, and you're not missing, you can probably put people down quite quickly. So it's more about precision as well, that one, I would say. So, but moving on from handguns, next we have the shotgun, one of the most powerful and reliable weapons featured in Resident Evil Survivor, and is identified as a Spaz 12, a combat shotgun made out of Italy. True to its real-world reputation, it fills the role of a hard-hitting, close-range powerhouse within the game's arsenal. It can be found in the bathroom of Paradise Prison. Whatever. Its placement makes it easy to miss, and you can you just literally find it. It's just right there, and if you're moving quickly, you can sort of blink and miss it sort of situations. However, taking the time to sort of explore, you can find it, and it dramatically improves Ark Thompson's combat effectiveness for the rest of the game. In terms of performance, the shotgun is a well-balanced and dependable weapon. It boasts significant firepower, a respectable rate of fire, and a good shell capacity, allowing players to deliver devastating damage without being overly punished by long reload times. Another major advantage is ammunition is quite readily available. Shotgun shells are relatively abundant throughout a standard playthrough, making the weapon far more practical than its power level might suggest. The generous ammo economy allows players to rely on it, fairly consistently, rather than treating it as a last resort option. And of course, as you'd expect, it's good against the Tyrant, the Hunters, and the Lickers, just as it is in the previous games. So next we have the grenade launcher, one of the heavier weapons available in Survivor, and is identified as an M79 grenade launcher, which is what you see in Resident Evil 2 and 3. The weapon represents a significant escalation in your arsenal, trading sustained fire for explosive high-impact damage. But it's weird because in this game they call it a grenade gun rather than a grenade launcher. That's the only thing I don't really understand. I know it's only a word, but it's just weird that in other games they've called it a grenade launcher, but in this they'll call it a grenade gun.
It seems like an unimportant but needless change in semantics.
Yeah, exactly. All this time we've known it as a grenade launcher, and then they're going to call it a grenade gun. Whatever. Probably something to do yet again with a Japanese-English translation, I would say. Grenade gun can be found perched on top of a car in the underground parking garage beneath Umbrella's headquarters. Its elevated placement makes it noticeable, but reaching it still requires careful navigation through a dangerous area. reinforcing its status as a mid to late game reward. It fires a single round per reload, just as it does in all the other games. This limitation is offset by a fast reload speed, allowing skilled players to remain mobile and aggressive rather than being locked into lengthy downtime after firing. One of the grenade gun's defining features is its ability to cycle through different types of weaponry, just as you ammunition, just as you do in the other games. So you obviously get the grenade, flame, and acid rounds. Due to its single-shot nature and scarce ammunition supply, the grenade gun is best used with hit-and-run tactics. Players are encouraged to fire, reposition, and reload, rather than simply standing their ground. Grenades are relatively uncommon throughout the game, and as such, the weapon should not be treated as a general-purpose tool. Instead, it's most effective when reserved for the specific high-threat encounters, such as the T-103 Tyrants and the Hypnos T-type Tyrant. So, yeah, I mean, I think I mainly got my use out of it when I was fighting the final Tyrant. I think that's when I used it. And the Magnum is, of course, one of the most powerful conventional firearms available in Resident Evil Survivor, and it's identified as a Smith & Wesson Model 19. The weapon sits firmly in the game's endgame arsenal, designed to deliver devastating stopping power at the cost of speed and efficiency. The Magnum is acquired late in the game and near the entrance to the factory. Its placement reinforces its role as the final act weapon, intended to assist the player during the most dangerous encounters that occur toward the conclusion of the story. In terms of raw power, the damage excels in highly effective against Tyrants, other powerful BOWs. It suffers from an extremely slow rate of fire and a lengthy reload time, making it ill-suited for encounters involving fast, aggressive enemies, in particular agile opponents such as the Undertakers. So, one of the Magnum's most defining limitations is its severe ammunition scarcity. There are only 2 Magnum ammo pickups in the entire game, making every round precious. On easy difficulty, each pickup contains 20 rounds, while on normal difficulty, that number drops dramatically to just 6 rounds per pickup. I mean, that's a hell of a drop, isn't it?
That is a big drop.
Because of this, the Magnum often becomes one of the most sought-after items in any playthrough, with players carefully deciding whether its limited ammunition is worth expending at any given moment. So, interestingly, examination text within the game suggests that the Magnum may have been intended to receive an upgrade during development. References to extend the barrel hint at a possible custom Magnum, a feature that was ultimately never implemented in the final release. In summary, the Magnum is a high-risk, high-reward weapon. When used sparingly and with purpose, it can tear through the game's most formidable enemies. However, its slow handling and extremely limited ammunition demand restraint, planning, and precision. In the wrong situation, it can quickly become more of a burden than a blessing, but in the right hands, it is nothing short of devastating. So, finally, we have the rocket launcher. As always, it is the single most powerful weapon available in Resident Evil Survivor. It's unlocked only after completing the game with an S rank. As a reward weapon, it comes with infinite ammunition, fundamentally changing how the game can be approached on subsequent playthroughs. But no one is playing this game through more than once.
No.
And if you have...
Not even with an infinite rocket launcher, it is just not worth it.
Infinite rocket launcher couldn't even tempt me to want to play it more than once. So anyone who does love this game and has played it more than once and does keep going back to it, drop us a message, whether that's on YouTube, on our Instagram, whatever, and just let us know what your thoughts are to this game and your approach to the weapons and blah blah blah, because it would genuinely be interesting to know about the players out there that genuinely have fond feelings towards this game. Anyway. So yeah, I mean, at close range, the rocket launcher becomes utterly unstoppable. Even Tyrants and advanced Hypnos forms do not have sufficient time to react, resulting in immediate and decisive kills. In these situations, the weapon lives up to its legendary status. Interestingly, remnants of rocket launcher ammunition still exist within the game's data, suggesting that the weapon may originally have been obtainable during the main campaign, at some point in development anyway. Ultimately, and rather obviously, this concept was abandoned with the rocket launcher reworked into a post-game reward featuring infinite ammunition and as a result, the leftover ammo items serve no functional purpose in the final release. The rocket launcher represents the absolute pinnacle of power in Resident Evil, and of course in Survivor that's no different. And that's pretty much it for weapons. So
yeah,
but this is a bit we always like to talk about on Typewriter Sessions. We're now moving on to Easter eggs. Because we've kind of covered the unlockables, because that is literally all there is to talk. Because we normally like to talk about unlockables and Easter eggs, but that is the only unlockable in Resident Evil Survivor. There's nothing else. It's literally just the rocket launcher. So, but yeah, when it comes to Easter eggs, well, there's not many of them either, to be fair. And there are some, they are somewhat mundane, so we'll quickly mention them while we mop up some of the, some of the interesting facts. Firstly, in the arcade, there are 2 posters on the wall showing other Capcom games, the first being Dino Crisis and the other being Darkstalkers. And in Lot and Lily's bedroom, there are also some posters for Capcom games. First is the Japanese poster for the game Ghosts and Goblins on the Famicom, and the other is for the Street Fighter collection. And from the best I can tell, that's pretty much it. We usually do have a section within Typewriter Sessions where we discuss the ports of the Resident Evil title in question and the various differences. However, Survivor didn't get any ports. Or did it? Something I did not know is that a PC release arrived only in China and Taiwan in 2002, offering mouse aiming, which in premise sounds genius. Sadly, the project was plagued with technical issues, from broken lighting to low-quality cutscenes. How did they get worse? I have no idea. And an infuriating amount of hoops to jump through for installation on modern systems. But a final fun fact, early in development, the game carried the subtitle Behind the Mask.
And
leftover textures still reference that name.
Not very...
Resident Evil Behind the Mask.
Whose mask, though?
Well, who knows? Who knows? So, as mentioned at the start of the episode, Resident Evil Survivor made its first public appearance on October 23rd when it was showcased at the Megalopolis 1999 trade show. Attendees were able to experience the game firsthand as a playable build was available at Capcom's booth. Sharing the spotlight alongside it was JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Heritage for the Future for the Dreamcast, giving players an early look at Capcom's upcoming projects across multiple platforms. In Japan, Resident Evil Survivor was promoted in keeping with something of a Resident Evil tradition now through 2 live-action television commercials.
No way.
It was indeed, both of which were exclusive to the region. The first of which depicted civilians on Sheena Island being warned of an unfolding biohazard crisis by the local Umbrella Security Service, directly tying the promotion into the world and storyline of the game itself. The commercial closed with the tagline, "You can't survive without the courage to fight." It's great.
Very, very poignant.
Yes, indeed. The second commercial took a very different approach. Rather than focusing on the story, it represented the game entirely from the first-person perspective of a light gun player, placing the viewers directly into the action and emphasizing the game's unique shooting mechanisms and immersive viewpoint. Together, these early showcases and Japan-exclusive advertisements highlighted Capcom's attempt to position Resident Evil Survivor as a bold departure from traditional survival horror, blending familiar Resident Evil themes with an arcade-style gunplay and cinematic presentation. So, I do have my copy of Resident Evil Survivor over there. I'll go get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have to, don't we? It's something we always do. Here we are. Come out, you little fella. Hello. Again, looks like it was distributed by Eidos. There we go.
Yeah, let's have a look. Nice thick book.
Yeah, considering.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, the cover just has a Glock 17 just laid down with some bullets next to it. So I guess emphasising the fact that it's all about the gun, baby.
Yeah.
There's not really much to it.
Yeah, and it's got G-Con control instructions in it.
Now, did you? Yes, so the EU version did get synchronized light gun controller compatible. Yeah, it does say that on here, yeah.
Yeah, it seems so just complex though. So controlling it complete with the gun trigger. To move forward, pull it once and hold. To run backwards, pull it twice quickly and hold. Run, pull it once while moving forward and hold. Yeah, turn left whilst pressing. Oh, so you could move by whilst holding the trigger down, physically moving the gun.
Oh my god, that sounds like a recipe for disaster.
Oh god. It's almost like a sort of precursor to like a Wii remote, the way it sort of wants like motion control almost. But,
yeah.
I bet this was no fun.
No, well,
in practice.
Well, it was meant to be played with the gun, allowing players to aim freely while navigating 3D environments. And at the time, it was like I said earlier, it was quite a bold idea. And although we received that support along with the Japanese release, of course, as well. But in North America, the light gun compatibility was removed at the last minute following the media backlash around the Columbine massacre.
Of course, yeah.
Forcing the US release to rely solely on the standard controller. I believe this was a potential reason why this game took a little longer before it was released in the US.
Yeah, because they've had to strip all of that out of its menu system and
stop people being able to play it. Because if people knew they were able to use it, they probably would have just gone and plugged it in. But it looks like they actually removed it. So yeah, it's quite interesting that really. I like that at the top there where it says "Same nightmare, different hell." Yeah, you're right there. It really is a different type of hell. A total new evolution of Resident Evil. A first-person shoot 'em up. Yeah. Not quite. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. So, launching in 2000 across Japan, Europe, and later North America, Resident Evil Survivor received mixed to negative reviews. Shock, horror. With critics citing awkward controls, especially in the US version. I don't think the light gun would have helped.
No.
Dated visuals and slow pacing. Some reviewers appreciated the experiment, but many felt the game landed between genres without fully mastering either one. And I think
happy to agree with that.
Yeah, probably sums it up in the best possible way. Michael Wygand of gaming magazine GamePro said in his review of the game in issue 147, December 2000, quote, "Don't be fooled by this one. Take Resident Evil out of the title, and all you have left, besides the name of a hit TV show, is a below-average corridor shooter. The scariest thing about this game is how awful it is." End quote. In summary, the game received less than favourable review scores. Of the outlets which are still in business as an online presence or still fighting that good fight as a printed publication, the scores are as follows. IGN, 4 out of 10. GameSpot, 4.1 out of 10. Game Informer, 4 out of 10. Edge, 5 out of 10. Famitsu, 31 out of 40. What? That is surprisingly high.
That is, well, yeah, that's...
You're scoring out of... That's like a solid like 80%.
Yeah, it is. You're well over... It's over 3/4 of their thing. So you're over 75% there. That is unbelievably positive for this game.
I agree. I was very surprised at that. John Thompson, in a review written for website Allgame, generally surmised it with his conclusion to his review by saying, quote, "Resident Evil Survivor is an interesting concept, one that might be perfected by Capcom in a higher-powered sequel. As it stands, however, this minor entry into the Resident Evil storyline might be fine for an afternoon rental if you're a die-hard fan, but the rest of us can tiptoe around it, regarding it as the junk it is." End quote. Yet, despite its rocky reception, Survivor accomplished a few important firsts. It was the first-person Resident Evil title. It pioneered a free-movement light gun hybrid, rare for its era, and it introduced Sheena Island, Ark Thompson, and the Hypnos Tyrant to franchise lore. It began the Gun Survivor sub-series, which continued with Survivor 2 Code Veronica, Dino Stalker, and Resident Evil Dead Aim, which we will, of course, discuss in future episodes of Typewriter Sessions. But today, Resident Evil Survivor is remembered as a bold but uneven experiment, an oddball entry with a cult following, significant for the risks it took and for the narrative threads it added to the broader Resident Evil universe. It wasn't the knockout Capcom hoped for, but it stands as a fascinating artifact from a time when Capcom was experimenting with new directions for the series, even if they didn't fully land, as some of the feedback was that the Resident Evil formula was ready for a shake-up. Mm-hmm. And that concludes, thankfully, our episode of Resident Evil Survivor.
What a journey we've been on.
Yeah. I mean, in the time that you've listened to this podcast, you could have completed the game.
Yep.
We said that, didn't we?
We did. Yeah. And you would wish that you just not bothered.
Pretty much like listening to this episode as well.
I think I've had a lot more fun recording this than I did sitting through a playthrough of Survivor.
Well, yeah, I think you're right. Actually, I mean, even when I recorded it, actually, I think I've had more fun recording than I had recording that. Yeah. Playing that.
I think Survivor is important for the franchise because I think this is the first point in Resident Evil history where it sort of forced the blinkers off a little bit, and I think it's important to stare in the face of even your most beloved favorite franchises, and accept that it's not all roses and sunshine, and that sometimes things are bad, and it's okay to accept that they're bad, and you can admit that, and you don't have to pretend otherwise.
Well, yeah, and I think you're right, because it kind of also it makes players realise, an audience realise, that even the best franchises given to the wrong people can fucking suck.
Very much so.
Because you kind of think to yourself, you certainly did at that stage, it was like, Resident Evil's just perfect, it can do no wrong.
Well, 3 bangers.
It's never going to have a bad game, sort of thing. Well, clearly it can have a bad game, and my God, it was very polarizing. You go from one extreme to another, and it's just poor. It's just a really poor game. And again, I think there's some good things that came out of it. When you think to yourself that it probably scratched that itch that people had of, like, once they learned that the original Resident Evil was going to be a first-person game, like, oh, can you imagine how scary it would be if it was first person? Yeah. It was like, well, yeah, it probably would have been if it had been done properly, or they just never bothered then and waited until they could actually do it properly. I mean, Resident Evil 7 is a perfect example of how scary a first-person experience can be in horror. I mean, not that they were the first to do it, but if we're going to talk about Resident Evil, then it's just a shame that they felt like they had to rush and do it there and then. They should have just left it. I mean, again, the fact that it's the same year that Code Veronica came out, and a year after Resident Evil 3, this game is a major backpedal. It's awful.
Yeah, but thankfully, it proved to be not completely alone, but it was for the most part an exception rather than the rule, and for at least the next, few years after this, Capcom sort of got the series very much back on track, at least with the mainline titles.
Yeah, it's a shit. Well, I guess what I was trying to say was that I guess every time they try to do like a side project, it always falls short, doesn't it?
Yeah. In
terms of quality. I mean, we'll talk about all of these games in due time, but when you think about Resident Evil Revelations, and you talk about like the Chronicles games, which are on rails, first persons, all these
Raccoon City.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, like, as good as a fun a game as that was as a co-op game, It's not a Resident Evil game. It's not lore. What was the fucking point then?
Yeah.
You know, it's just like they try all these little things, don't they? And half the time, these offshoots just aren't that good. It's like just focus all of your efforts into doing mainline only.
Mm-hmm.
Stop trying to just get a little bit more out of the series all the time when all you're doing is putting the series at risk. I mean, there was a real that spot between Resident Evil 3 and Resident Evil 4, I would say, was awful, wasn't it? Because they were just throwing shit out.
Yeah, I guess aside from the and the remake.
True.
But even that was it was still sort of retreading, albeit like a glorious upgrade, but it was still sort of retreading previously explored.
And people at that point were also a little bit bored of the mechanics of the game. People were wanting something new, something different, weren't they?
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like although the remake and Zero were amazing, but people were like, just like I said at the end of that, then people were already starting to become aware that okay, we're a few games in now and we're just getting the same over and over and over again. Already starting to wear a little thing.
It is a formula now, yeah.
And those games came out in quick succession. I mean, we talked about that before in like Resident Evil 2 and 3. Like now, if you've got a sequel, a AAA title sequel, a year after the previous, you'd be laughing all the way to the bank.
You couldn't believe your luck if that happened.
No, but like now you're waiting years and years.
If you get now a sort of a follow up to a major AAA franchise within 5 years, you're doing good.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. I mean, how many games get announced and then you don't see them for years? I mean, look at the Knights of the Old Republic remake.
Yep.
They announced that.
Elder Scrolls 6.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, fuck me.
When you've got a head of a major studio like Todd Howard publicly declaring that he wishes he'd never announced the game because of how far away it still is, it's like that's problematic.
Yes, it is. And I can't believe we thought we had it bad that we had to wait a year between fucking Resident Evil games. But I think if they had, maybe the formula might not have felt like it was as stale as quickly as we felt like it was. And then maybe the atrocity of Survivor might not have happened.
Well, it did, but we lived through it.
Only just.
On to greener pastures for our next couple of episodes.
Well, we do have a field report coming up because James has now finished Requiem.
I have. Yes, I finally got through it all, so I'm very excited to talk about that. Before the world has moved on from it. I mean, we're purposefully leaving it a little longer just because we want people to have had plenty of time to have experienced it. Yes, because we will be going full spoiler in the field report.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're not going to be talking about it like an episode in depth, like a standard episode.
Yeah, it's going to be very much a free form, just sort of chat about the game rather than a
deep dive,
detailed breakdown of its development. Yeah, it's just going to be
But we're obviously going to be touching on some elements which will be very spoiler.
Yeah, we'll be talking about the story. We'll be talking about certain things that happen, characters that appear.
So if you haven't finished it by the time that field report goes out and you are listening to this episode, please wait until you've finished it before you tune in. We will, of course, start the episode with spoiler alerts.
Yes.
So, but yeah, that's coming up. And then in terms of our mainline episodes, next is Code Veronica.
Yeah, which I've never played Code Veronica, so I'm going to try my very best to smash a playthrough out before we get there, and
do it.
Hopefully, be as clued up as I can be.
It's tough. Yeah. It's a tough game. I've got the playthrough on my channel again. I've got the playthrough on my channel if you want to go and watch it or whatever. But it's a tough game, Code Veronica, and replaying it again was cool. I really enjoyed replaying it. So we've got that to jump into. The script for that is coming along nicely. we're hoping we'll have that to you in good time, as long as we can get lined up for recording, get a schedule together for recording. So that's next. In the meantime, we obviously still want to say thank you to all of our listeners. We've still seen that we're still really popular in the States. It's crazy. We had one of our New York listeners reporting in on YouTube. He left a comment to say that he was listening in from upstate New York. That's Leafs for Never 34.
Thank you very much, dude.
Thank you, my main man. Thank you very much for reporting in, and we really appreciate you listening and tuning in. And thank you to everyone. Again, all of our listeners. Like again, it's crazy when you see some of the locations that come through. You know, like we said last week. Last episode, should I say? You know, when you've got listeners in Chicago and LA and Atlanta and all these other places, just
bonkers.
It's weird. It's really weird, but it's really, really cool to know that you guys are enjoying it and you're tuning in. So, and obviously, thank you to our UK listeners as well. We have got a UK listener base here as well. So, thank you to everybody. It's really, really appreciated, because we just love talking about Resident Evil, don't we?
We do, very much so.
And the fact that
even the bad games.
Well, you know, anyway. So yes, thank you very much, everybody. Is there anything else from you, James?
I don't think so. I will be raring to go for our deep spoiler chat about Requiem. Yeah,
I'm looking forward to that. It'll be good to have a real good chat about that, won't it? We've obviously spoken about it, but it'll be good to finally get some time to sit down and just talk about it fully. I'm actually just on my third playthrough.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, I've just unlocked in for the ammo. Tearing it up.
Beautiful, I bet. I can't imagine how much fun that is.
It's more fun than it was before.
Yeah.
Because now there's like zero consequences.
Yeah.
It's literally just tearing it up. I fucking love it. But anyway, we'll talk about that in a bit.
Yep.
So, in the meantime, everybody, thank you very, very much. If you have been enjoying it, we'd really appreciate if you could either leave some comments on the episodes on YouTube, or a review or whatever on Spotify.
Yeah, subscribe to the podcast on Apple or Spotify, whatever platform you're on. Share it with other like-minded Resident Evil fans.
Exactly. Leave reviews, comments wherever you can, if possible. All these things really do help the podcast. Don't feel inclined to do so just because we're asking you, but obviously these things do help the podcast, and it'd be really, really cool if you did. But ultimately, we're just really happy that you're listening. So thank you very much, everybody. And in the meantime, it's goodbye from James.
Goodbye.
And goodbye from me. And keep those ink ribbons stocked up, and we'll catch you real soon. See you later, everybody. Bye. Bye.